You know, Atari were pretty big players in the video game industry. There are many people that doubt video games would ever have become popular if not for Atari bringing them to the homes. But is that true? What would happen if Atari weren't around? What if they failed? What if they went bankrupt before they could even attempt to revolutionize video games in the way they did? Would video games even become popular? Let's find out. But as you know, as like the last time, we have to go back in time to find out what went right for Atari, in order to find out what we can make go wrong for them. So let's go back to what made Atari popular, and no, it's not the 2600, it was something 5 years previous to the 2600. It was the Pong cabinet. Yeah, you know that game Pong? You know, you just bat a ball between two glow sticks? Yeah. Now, Pong was pretty popular and had a pretty big knock-on effect. Man, look at all these people. I mean, it's impossible to put into words how many Pong consoles were. These are only some of the more prominent consoles at the time. But this caused another video game crash. Yeah, there was a video game crash of 1983, and there was also the video game crash of 1977 with too much Pong consoles on the market. So now, then Atari came and revolutionized video games with the Atari 2600, therefore rescuing the industry from the crash it was going through. But now, what can we change? Going back to the Pong cabinet for a second, there was a company that was unhappy with it. This company was Magnavox and the Odyssey. They claimed it was too similar to an Odyssey game called Tennis, and so tried to file a lawsuit against Atari. But Atari agreed to settle out of court. So, it's simple what we do. We make Atari fight this case in court. The reason Atari didn't fight the case in court was because they didn't believe they could win, and the legal costs would have been way too big for Atari to handle. So it's simple, we have Atari lose the case to Magnavox, and Magnavox locks down the rights to Pong. Therefore, Atari goes bankrupt, and now the fun begins, because now one event has changed, everything after it can change as well. So now with the big Magnavox seal of copyright all over the Pong game, someone else is going to have to come along. What we're going to have to find is a game that becomes popular in the place of Pong that's going to be brought to the home, and therefore become popular in the place of Pong, therefore allowing someone else to get in, and therefore kickstarting the video game industry. Let's look ahead. I mean, these are all arcade games, and while the home industry might have been changed for a while, the arcades have pretty much remained the same. So games like Space Invaders, Frogger, Pac-Man, Pole Position, they're all going to be released in the arcades. We just need a console to port them to. Let's look forward to 1976, when a console was released called the Fairchild Channel F. And what's so revolutionary about this console is that it uses interchangeable cartridges. And yet, this console could be used to do exactly what we wanted to do. Despite having a lower effect, people will still be pretty happy at being able to play Pac-Man and Space Invaders at home. So now, Fairchild Channel F has Pac-Man, and the Odyssey 2 gets released now because video games are starting to become popular again. And yeah, the Odyssey 2 did actually have a Pac-Man clone. It was called Casey Munchkin. And there were some differences, like for instance there were less dots on the screen and there was a creatable map tool. But now Fairchild are going to give Odyssey a taste of their own medicine. And these stragglers here, the Emerson Arcadia 2001, the Intellivision, the ColecoVision, if they attempt anything similar, they're going to get a taste of the medicine too. Now Fairchild has locked down the market. Can we find another competitor to them? Yeah, but not in America or Europe. We have to look to Japan to find a competitor. There's two consoles being released in 1983 in Japan. One of them is the Famicom, and the other is the SG-1000. And yeah, these consoles could be released in the US. I mean, they were in the real events. So, let's go back to America. So now we have three consoles, and it's obvious that the Fairchild Channel F was too weak to compete with either of them, so Fairchild will just bow out of the industry like they did in the real events. Because Fairchild were never trying to be competitive, they're just trying to make something that became popular. And when it did become popular, that's fine for them. They go back to making semiconductors. But let's look at Nintendo and Sega now. I'm pretty sure you all think it's just going to be like the real events. We're going to get Genesis does with Nintendo into PlayStation, yada yada yada, and stop there. That's not going to happen. Because the video game crash never happened, a lot of things that have happened as a result of it aren't going to happen as well. I mean, we're still going to get first-party games that are still pretty competitive. You know, we get Zelda, Mario, Metroid, Excitebike on the NES, and Phantasy Star, Alex Kidd, Afterburner, and Wonder Boy on the Master System. But there's something else. Third-party support. That's pretty important, isn't it? These companies are still going to be formed. I mean, they were all formed in Japan. So, they're not going to be affected by anything that happens in America. But where are they going to go? Do you really think they're going to go to the side of Nintendo? No. See, what happened was, Nintendo created the 10 NES lockout chip in their cartridges to prevent another video game crash from happening right after the crash of '83. But this also allowed them to monopolize the industry. They could say to third-party developers, you can only develop for us, otherwise we're not going to let you develop games for our console, because their console became popular. Sega launched their console too late to compete with Nintendo, and it wasn't down to anything Sega were doing wrong, but rather what Nintendo were preventing them from doing that meant the Sega Master System wasn't going to be a success. But now in our altered events where there's no 10 NES lockout chip, they're going to go to the side with the more potential, and that is Sega. The Sega Master System was much more powerful than the NES. It's just that not a lot of people realized it because no one ever got to use it. Now, we have a scenario set up. Sega are the top dog once again in the video game industry. But who's going to challenge them? Are Nintendo going to be back? What happens in the altered events now that Atari were never around? What innovations are going to be missed from the real events in our altered events? I've been the man with a plan. Thank you for watching my video.